Hello, I'm Sharon Byrne. I'm a fisherman's daughter. When I grow up, I want to be like Sheila Appleton. When I first left art college, I took a studio at Cable Street in London and I commuted in from Lee. This is from a series called Musical Journey, called Greetings, borrowed from the Snowboy tune Greetings from Southend-on-Sea. It's in the Epping Forest District Museum collection. At the time, this was from a series Spilling Out, made after a trip to West Bay and Dorset. I was exploring the Clifford Stills notion of painting working beyond the canvas and the idea of infinity. I wanted the drama to roll into the open space like the cliffs fell into the sea, which in turn rolled into the beach. In the charcoal drawings, I was looking at the confinement versus opening up of space. They don't depict an actual space, they're made up. Although I do refer to physical spaces, I prefer to take photos as sketches and memory joggers. The physicality comes from the materials used at the time. Phew! Breathe. I was lucky enough to be selected to travel to Switzerland with an artist I greatly admire, Ian McKeever. We visited sites depicted in the paintings of J.M.W. Turner, and we were generally treated as VIPs by the Swiss Tourist Board. Scarily, we were given watercolours to make on the hoof sketches, and I never got on with that medium before. I grew up in a Lee fishing family, and from studying Turner I realised that my own fascination with light came from all the summer holidays I spent on my dad's boat. These are details taken from an installation exploring this heritage. My dad and his granddad, known as Old Marra, are featured. After my dad died, I did a series that referred to the shipping forecast. I remembered my dad listening avidly to clues about the weather, the forecast running in the studio. I'd think of the drama that underlie the beautiful rhythmic lull calmly delivered by the presenter. Things like 994 falling more slowly and perhaps gale later. To the left is an installation made up of images of sea and water called Water Shelf. Included are some of Niagara Falls where I'd always wanted to visit, and some canal reflections which I took when I worked on the Venice Biennale in 1999. On the right is the first painting I made in aluminium, and it's called Changing Tides. I started to work with metal and other reflective materials as a response to the silver light that we see over the Thames estuary, and unique to the East Coast. These come from a series, Here Comes the Sun. They're oil on aluminium, and not really sunrises, just the feeling of hope you get from looking out over to the estuary. I moved into red as I felt the work was becoming too literal, so I used the intensity of colour that was suggested by its very absence in the estuary. That blinding flash, obscuring all detail, blink and it's changed again. In the words of Ian McKeever, the challenge is to imbue the canvas with light rather than to depict it. Looking out from Lee, you can see the industry of the Isle of Grain and Canvey Island. The chimneys, the fuel drums, the gasometers have their own beauty as they catch the light. They're just presence in the haze. These are graphite and acrylic on canvas. The bottom one's called Canvey Lights. Blue Blue, electric blue, refers to the industrial impact of the estuary and electric storms, also to Sound and Vision by David Bowie. Back to blue, but without horizons. A tutor once said to me to keep away from blues as they're difficult to use, but I find the intensity of both blues and reds work for me with the metallic. These works on paper using graphite and paint look at how light forms in a shape, brushes across the middle or leaves a trace on the edge, leaving not quite sure if you saw it or not. Someone mentioned Rothko when looking at these red works. This was very flattering, as I find his seaground paintings really moving. I'm interested in how memory is triggered by light, and I noticed that many of the fish-like or bone-shaped forms come into my paintings, both consciously and unconsciously. This photo was taken when I was a child and commemorated the day my dad landed an 80-pound anglerfish, and we were called in to say poo. John Hegley wrote a poem reflecting the middle-class status that was conferred on him by university and the conflict with his working class upbringing. Education, travel and foreign food wasn't something of a tradition in our family. Viewing anyone who wasn't in his industry with suspicion, my dad referred to commuters as heron eaters, believing that for some reason they had time to eat kibbles for breakfast. Hegley's poem rang a real bell with me, and my version might read something like, on a reminiscent note, remembering Dad's fishing boat, Leon Sea, as I'm swallowing moule marinière. I've got my thing here to breathe. Here's a taster of new works of metal, layers of light and memory enveloping elements. The one on the right is called Wet Weather, two different spellings and meanings put together in the confusion that's sometimes memory. I'm not surprised we forget things as we become older. Our memory banks must become huge. I flout a lot of rules with painting, although copper was used by old masters. These are still in the experimental stage, as they work differently to aluminium. In Switzerland, I use watercolour thickly as oil, and on metal I'm using oil in a watery way. They're essentially etchings, but the plate is painting. Just a quiet rebellion. Pink Pathway and Marsh Haze, these have already been sold to Mr. Cooper of the In-Betweeners, but as they were made for the art trail, I will still be showing them at my venue, and that's Net Paper. It's a new friendly stationery supplier owned by the charming Britton brothers, and it has a magnificent view of the estuary, which is perfect. My studio at Hadley Old Fire Station, you can see two family of figures. The male's just there with the checked pinion. It was commented on that the model's modesty had been covered up, but it most certainly hasn't. Some people may remember a very controversial comment about women in short skirts. I've been working as an artist educator for 17 years, and I still love the work. But lastly but not least, I'm a mum to a lovely daughter, and here's a picture of how she sees me. It's a couple of years old now, which is probably a huge embarrassment to her now, but I couldn't resist it, because I think she's really captured the essence.
Hello, I'm Emma, and the first slide is where I was conceived, Las Vegas Grill, a fish and chip shop along the Golden Mile in Southend. My mum and dad had a flat there in 1964, and I painted this as a tribute to the Golden Mile. I was actually born in Rochford Hospital, which is now a psychiatric unit, which I think we should bear in mind for some of my later pictures. Here I am in 1976 at Wesley Schools. As you can see, there's not much school uniform going on, and I just thought that we had such a wonderful education in the 70s. We were taught by hippies who were trained in the 60s, and I remember many afternoons pretending to dance like a tree to progressive rock music. And I think it's a shame that education has gone downhill since. My dad was in the Temperance Servant Jazz Band, and he was very into faux Edwardian. So in the 70s, around my house, there was faux Edwardian, and my mum was a lover of Bieber and Habitat, so we also had the Art Nouveau. Unfortunately, the chip shop laugh did not last, and my parents split up when I was 6. Here's a painting I did for my O-level. Jenny and Mark, Jenny who is actually in the audience. I was 15 when I did that. There's a lovely picture of me as a 15-year-old in the corner, dressed as the Human League. I was colloquially for an afternoon. I went to Southend Tech, and where I did very little for 2 years, and it actually took me 10 attempts to get into art college, and the tutors got very pissed off with me, as did my mother, who's in this picture, and she threw me out, and I ended up living in a squat with lots of very interesting people. Things haven't changed much. This is to Alan Shillingford, who was my printing lecturer at Southend Tech, and he got really fed up with me because I never did any work. I was constantly going, but Alan, I don't know what to do. He was going, well, just do anything. So in the end, I just looked down at my desert boots, which I thought were very trendy, and did this lovely lithograph of them. And he was pleased. I was very political, and was in a fantastic band called the TV Dinners, and the highlight of our career was that we supported Allegiance to No One at the Cliff pub in Southend for the Young Socialists. I also collected money for the miners outside Southend police station and got spat on, which made me want to leave Southend. So I went to Sunderland, where I drew lots of angry and depressed women, and nothing's changed much since, really. In fact, I think the one on the right needs to go to the toilet. Yes, Sunderland was a very interesting place in 1985, and all the pits had been closed down. I then decided, after bumming around for 2 years, to be a teacher and taught in Naarm, that is Dagenham. I did 3 tours of duty. And after doing my tours of duty in Dagenham, I went to Botswana in Africa, and that's a picture of my daughter who's in the audience when she was only 5, and the kids on my school compound. I taught art out there. One of my students while I was teaching in Botswana was a young man called Evans Medisi, who was HIV positive. Botswana had an AIDS epidemic out there at the time, and he was very brave. He came out about his status and was the first Botswana to say that he was HIV positive, and wrote the first HIV/AIDS charter, and that's why I drew him. This is me when I was pregnant. When I was pregnant, I really wanted my husband to take a picture of me pregnant. I thought it would be really interesting, but he refused to do it, saying it was obscene. So I had to set the camera up and then run around and sit on the bed and let the timer go off. But then, of course, you couldn't get your photos developed because in Botswana, pornography was illegal, and I was shooting myself getting my photos developed, but I didn't manage. I did lots of workshops in Botswana, and these are some of the people I did a workshop with. Koile over there was 3 days late to the workshop because he got shot in the shebeen in Cape Town. That's the kind of African artist that we were hanging out with. And Kwam, who was a sand artist. Sand art, I think, is very influential in my work. I had twins, and therefore I'm not frightened of any man. These are my twins sleeping in a bed together. They're very beautiful. In Botswana culture, they always say that the twin that pushes out the smaller twin is the one who will inherit the goats. And my son did push out his little sister, and he's definitely going to inherit my goats. This is a painting. I have very bad asthma, and I have a scoliosis of the spine. And so this lovely picture of my scoliosis of the spine and my asthma in one picture. And I felt, oh, art is quite healing, quite like that. So remember that for later. This is my big boy, the biggest twin who pushed out his sister. This is a picture of me holding him like a trophy. He's now 13 and very smelly. He's not here, so I can say that. In Botswana, women like to paint their huts. It's sort of quite a traditional thing, and the Tswana people spill over into South Africa. The South African women would paint their huts with the ANC colours and ANC flags, quietly showing their defiance to the apartheid movement. So this is a painting I did of a hut. My marriage ended and I was very sad, and I was on Prozac for 2 years. And I painted this on Prozac, and I just wondered, was my art any better whilst I was on, antidepressant drugs? I'm not sure. But something I might repeat soon. If my work doesn't sell. When I came back to England, I decided to be an art psychotherapist. My mum used to, my son, Frank, used to say, "Mum, is it true you're going to be a fart terrorist?" And I said, "No, darling, it's an art therapist." Anyway, my first placement was on Canopy Island, where I thought they were a bit strange, hence the long shadows, but I've subsequently become a complete Canopy-phile and love Dr. Feelgood. I belonged to a book club, and at one particular point, all the men in the book club were choosing very, very depressing Russian Cold War literature that was driving me crazy, and so I painted a picture of them all being pompous twats, and then realised I had a PNT. But anyway, this lovely picture came out of it. And finally, I'm back to the Golden Mile. Last year I did a whole series of paintings on the Golden Mile, and this is the Neptune fish and chip shop next to the Las Vegas Grill, and I finally decided that I do quite like Southend.
This is where I first met a rat, and this is where I live now, and as you can see, it's possibly not the nicest place in there, but I know. And from this flat I've kind of discovered myself, and every day I live there is a day that I think, oh, by the way, this is where I started my photography. This guy bought me a camera and said, "Would you take pictures of me, because I can't find a cameraman who will just let me have the pictures after the wedding." without sort of so I can mess about with. So I just said, yeah, I'll do it. And this is what took me into photography. And this is Fiona, who's kind of my muse. And I think, well, of all the people I like taking pictures of, this is probably my favourite. She's just absolutely beautiful, completely long-necked, completely long-armed, and completely amazing. And I never ever get bored of taking her. This guy just jumped off the thing and I just started taking these pictures from my balcony. And because where my balcony is, I just have this kind of frame of pictures that are just incredible. They just don't know I'm there, or some do. But and they just do these unbelievable things in front of me. But after that, I just decided to start this gallery with Jane, who's here in the audience, called Untitled Space, which was an absolutely fantastic journey. We've had a great time. We've really learned a lot about art with the Untitled Space, and there it is. I don't know if you all know it, but that started from this place, being in the Lee Art Trail last year, and I asked the builder if I could use his premises, and from that we were able to create this amazing little gallery for 9 months with the help of Jane and all the other people that were in fact, there's Madeline's bird dovecote, which was just sensational, and I just loved it, and I wanted it to be in the gallery as the first thing. And it was a bit of a warm-up gig. We didn't really know what we were doing, and she was just so professional and so brilliant. And we ended with quite possibly one of the greatest rock photographers of the time. He's doing fantastic stuff, and to actually be able to do that from sort of going from not knowing anything about curating to actually having a fellow like this come along and say, yeah, I'll do something, was incredible, incredible 9 months. But it all started back a couple of years back when I was doing pictures in pubs. And this is how really I learned my craft. And these people were incredible, absolutely incredible, so dedicated to music and stuff like that. And I love music, maybe not as much as Paul, but I love music and listening to these people. And then I started doing conceptual stuff, and Steve is here with the who owns the car, and we started using Fiona, and incredibly she's got a twin. And I couldn't get much better, could it? And so I was thinking, I started using them on some shoots, and it was great fun, and we started producing stuff. And then I started using the skills that I get from graphic design to start producing pictures that are half photographs and half paintings, in my eyes. I mean, take it as you like. But there's a lot of work in that you don't know. It's not all about just taking the picture. And I enjoy that. And then, of course, I started getting into landscapes. And I think really this is where I found my niche. I love being out, and I love walking, and I love being alone. I was with Lester with this, and this morning was 1 in a million. I mean, we couldn't have planned it. You couldn't have tried to predict it. It was just as it was down in Raynham. That's weird. That's supposed to be the show for that. I don't know what's happened there, but basically, great camera technique. I did this project with Metal about show flat, and I decided to embed myself into a very painful subject, and this is what we produced from it, which was a fantastic book, one of 100, and I'm very proud to have been involved in that. And with Linda, who was a fantastic help to me in bridging the gap between me not knowing really about what these guys' illnesses were about and me being able to take the pictures. Then I started doing things off my own back. Me and Johnny were just cycling one day and came across this amazing opera going on down at Two Tree Island, which fortunately I had my camera with, and it was just bionic. And I'm not a massive opera fan, I must admit, and it's brought me to taking a picture of Duke of Kent, and I was following this guy around these gardens and all this chaos, which was all being created by this one man, which was incredible. And he was a lovely man and totally professional, probably didn't give a monkeys about what he was looking at. Which then brought me on to a project I've just done with the Pier, And this was to try and rekindle some of the old tourist posters and come to Southend, you know, come to Hadley, come to Lee, come wherever. And I just sort of kind of really got interested in this after going around the, and that's just a transvestite. I thought I kind of brought that in as a you know, as a personal favourite, and you know, and obviously we've been dating for a while, and you know, and as you can see, fantastic makeup. But this was all about me sort of doing it, and this is a project I'm very proud of that I've just done with Amy, and I'm sure she won't mind me showing you a little bit. This is we decided to go and terrorise IKEA, and she wanted to do this thing where she was walking around as a 50s lady in IKEA suburbia, or whatever you want to call it. And this is what I'm doing now. This is going to be my stuff for the Lee Art Trail. There's postcards on the tables if you want to take them. Coffee Bean is where I'll be, and obviously I'll be signing autographs. And you know, I hope you enjoy the Lee Art Trail, which I have to say is a lot of people's hard work and a combination of a lot of stress, and people do a fantastic job without getting paid.